So earlier I posted I was going to do a Q&A, and that's what we're doing now. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that you've posted on my social media and try and answer them about the fish project. So the first one is from Simon Waller on Twitter, and he has, how did you film the Gwyniad in Lake Barla, Wales? I didn't. So Gwyniad are European whitefish, and they're the same species as Powan in Scotland and Shelley in the Lake District. So they've all got different names in each different country, but they're the same species. So I filmed them in Scotland, Powan, and they were in a tank nice and easy. So I've not done Gwyniad in Wales, but they're not a separate species, so that's why I didn't include them. A few people have mentioned the whitefish in that regard. So no, Gwyniad, Powan, Shelley, all the same species. Tony Cooper on Twitter also says, congratulations, well done, what next? Every fish in Europe. I would love to do some European fish. That is my dog pitter-pattering. Alright, come here, hang on. Oh, demanding little dog, aren't you? I'd love to do more fish in Europe. Things like asp, which are like chub on steroids. I think they'd be pretty cool. I have got plans to potentially go to Spain and do... what are you doing? And do some of the fish there. And I'd also like to do some of the catfish in France. So Europe, yeah. And even further afield, Marcia in India. I'd love to do the Marcia. And I'd also like to do the salmon run in Alaska and kind of North America. So lots of plans. When I'll do them, I don't know, but I'll get around to them. I'll do it at some point. So Paul Rousson from Facebook says, which fish was hardest to film? Not so much the rarest, but the hardest to capture once located. That's a really good question, because a lot of the rarer fish actually weren't that difficult to film because they were either on a survey, so like, here's your fish, have a film of it, or they weren't that tricky. I would actually say that the hardest fish to film was probably zander, I would say, because they're not that rare, but they tend to live in very murky water or very deep down in lakes, so they were very, very tricky to get, and that took a long time. I went fishing with Matt Hayes. He gave me some tips, but we didn't film any zander on the day. Eventually I did get some in the Trent, on the upper Trent, and I also was very lucky to get a small zander mixed in with some roach and perch on Rutland Water, so they were really hard actually. Graham Smith from YouTube says, I'm puzzled as to why koi and leather carp and other pond species are not included. Not a criticism, only an observation. So leather carp, koi carp, common carp, mirror carp, king carp, ghost carp are all Cyprinus carpio. They're all the same species. They're different subspecies, but they're all the same species. Now I didn't include subspecies for the challenge because there are thousands of subspecies of fish in the British Isles, and to film them all would be unrealistic. So just species. It's like with brown trout, ferox trout, sea trout, chalk stream trout, highland trout. They're all the same species. They're all Salmo-trutta. So that's why I didn't include kind of subspecies, because it wouldn't be realistic. And they all are the same species at the end of the day. In terms of like other pond species, things like sturgeon, some of the ornamental sturgeon, I didn't include those because, for one, they can't breed in the UK. None of the sterlets, the diamonds, the belugas, they can't spawn successfully. They're not legal to stock, so there shouldn't be many of them. And to be honest, you get the odd one on rivers, but there's not loads of them. You're not picking them out all the time. So it was unrealistic to target them in the wild. I have filmed those sturgeon in ponds. There's actually a video on the YouTube channel which may magically appear right now, or a link to it will anyway. So I have done them, but I didn't include them in the list. Also on YouTube, Bobtail VW22, I'm assuming Bobtail VW21 and below was gone, has put, you couldn't find a burbot, question mark. No, I couldn't, because they're extinct. So I know people like to remain optimistic and hopeful, but can we all just accept that burbot are gone? They aren't here in the UK. You hear about burbot being seen since the 70s or the 80s, but who was that last person? There's no, I mean, I know there must have been someone, but that kind of fact is chucked around, but we don't actually know who was that last person. You don't see any pictures of British burbot. You try finding a picture of an angler holding a British burbot. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are out there. But I can't find any online. I can't find it in any old angling books. So they are a very mysterious fish. And I think it's just a pipe dream that there are any burbot left in the UK. I know people like to say, well, they could be, but they could also be Bigfoot. But, I don't think there are any burbot. Pollution, kind of global climate change, global warming, it's not a suitable habitat that it was. So I don't think there are any burbot left. There are plans ahead potentially to reintroduce them in suitable habitats. So like lowland England and parts of that maybe aren't ideal, but there are areas that are good for them. And there are rumblings about reintroducing burbot. I'd love to be proved wrong. I'd love someone out there to say, well, you know what? I've got a picture of a burbot that I took last week. And it'd be a little bit annoying, but at the same time, I'd be quite pleased to be proven wrong. But I'm pretty sure there are no burbot left. And I did also photograph a stuffed one, so I'm counting that. On Instagram, Joe1867 says, do you have a favourite fish from an early age, and is it still your favourite to film? Well, I wasn't really as into fish as I am now when I was younger. I liked all wildlife, mainly reptiles and amphibians. That's what I was really into, and I still am really. But probably my favourite would have been sticklebacks, because that's what I would have seen more. There was a little tiny stream, a trickle of a stream near where I lived, and you could catch some of the males with beautiful kind of red belly. So that was probably my favourite fish as a kid. As I've got older, grayling are definitely my favourite fish. The lady of the stream, these beautiful fish, beautiful dorsal fins. So grayling are my favourite now, definitely. Okay, and last question. Soprendo over at Instagram as well says, what's next? Well, I'd like to do marine fish. I think marine fish would be pretty interesting. However, I can't do them all because most of them are deep sea in the British Isles. So maybe some of the coastal species would be pretty good to do. I'd like to do birds underwater. That would be really good to do. European fish, as I spoke about earlier. And really just keep filming and photographing some of these fish that I want to try and get. So anyway, thanks for sending the questions over. Hopefully you've been enjoying the content. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.